Second Peter 3 and 2 real quick.
It's the second
Because like you Christians, man, it mainly comes from you so-called Christians that when we read the Bible or when we use the Bible, we're always using the Old Testament. And then you always like to use the fact that the Lord came to bring a new covenant, which that's something you don't even understand, but you like to say that we only deal with the Old Testament. Well, that's a lie. We tap into the Old Testament and the New Testament. But what you fail to realize is the Old Testament and the New Testament go hand in hand. You're supposed to read the Old and the New Testament. Why do you always think that the Lord says, as it was written, as it is written, as it is written, time after time? He keeps quoting the Old Testament because when he came on the scene, that was what they had. The old scrolls, man. The prophets, man. And the Torah. That's what they went by back then. So you gotta understand the reason why you have to read the Old Testament is because it goes hand in hand. And not to mention the prophecies that are written in the Old Testament, there's still prophecies that haven't even came to pass yet that are in the Old Testament. Right? So you gotta understand that too. Alright? For you New Testament lovers. Now get to 2 Peter 3.
2 Peter 3 verse 2. It says that ye may be mindful of the words which were spoken before by the holy prophets, and of the commandment of us, the apostles of the Lord and Savior.
That's right. So it said you must be mindful of what was spoken by the ancient prophets before you, man. Because, like it says in Romans, what was written aforetime was written for our learning. How are we able to learn the prophecies and be able to break it down to you if we don't read the Old Testament? If we don't go and break it down?
I always say, the Bible's an incomplete book if you only read half of it.
That's right.
Really, if you don't even have the Apocrypha, it's not going to add up to enough.
That's right.
You need the Apocrypha also, the 1611 version as well, to really be able to put all the pieces to the puzzle together.
Deuteronomy 32:7. No, you gotta read the whole book, man. You can't just take one half of the book and give credit to it and leave out the other half. That doesn't make it complete, man. The Lord said he comes in the volume of the whole book, man.
It says, Deuteronomy 32:7, it says, remember the days of old, consider the years of many generations. Ask thy father, and he will show thee thy elders, and they will tell thee.
Yeah, basically meaning you're supposed to inquire of old times and your forefathers, and in particular the prophets that were of old, man. We supposed to know about our forefathers, man. The men of the ancient world. We're supposed to inquire and seek that, man. And those group of men, they left behind writings. And what were those writings? Words that were given to them by the Heavenly Father, man. And they just wrote it down. So if you don't want to read the Old Testament, you don't want to read the words of the Most High. Nor do you want to get prophecy. Now let's see what the Lord had to say about the Old Testament. We finna read in the New Testament what the Lord said about the Old Testament. This was during the time when he came back after he resurrected from the dead. after he got crucified.
This is Luke.
If you want to start up a couple chapters, verses, you can.
This is Luke 24 and 40. Yeah, it says, when he had thus spoken and showed them his hands and his feet, for while they yet believed not for joy and wonder, he said unto them, have ye here any meat? And they gave him a piece of broiled fish and of an honeycomb. And he took it and did eat before them.
He was gluttonous, he came back and ate. Hey, the Lord came back from the dead. He resurrected. After all this went down, he came back. And was like, hey, y'all got something to eat? I'm hungry.
It says, 44, it says, and he said unto them, these are the words which I spake unto you while I was yet with you, that all things must be fulfilled.
Hey, and he's basically reminding them that, remember the scrolls that I went over with you when I was teaching you in the synagogues, that all these different things must come to pass. This is basically what he's describing to them. This is what he's telling them. That all these things must be fulfilled. He's basically showing them out of the Old Testament the things that I was talking to you about. This is what's occurring.
It says, these are the words which I spake unto you while I was yet with you, that all things must be fulfilled, which are written in the law of Moses.
Which are written in the law of Moses. That's the Old Testament. The first 5 books. Go ahead.
And in the prophets.
And in the prophets. The Tanakh. The book of the prophets.
And in the Psalms.
And in the Psalms.
Concerning him.
So that basically explains that the Lord was written about and spoken of all throughout the Old Testament. So how could you leave the Old Testament out of it? That doesn't make any sense.
That's where all the meat is at.
That's where it's all at.
That's where the history is at. That's where the laws, statutes, and commandments is at.
Yep.
That's the way that we're supposed to be. The prophets is where the prophecies are at.
That's right.
That's what sets apart this book from any other book. Never written about religion or any book in the world. It's the prophecies.
That's right.
So how you not gonna go to the Old Testament and read about the prophecies?
That's right.
That makes sense.
And another reason, the reason why you don't like to go into the Old Testament is because the law is there.
Right.
Now y'all despise the law, man. You jakes, man, y'all hate keeping the law.
These laws are meant to do you good.
They're meant to it's beneficial to your life.
Right.
You live longer keeping the law, man. Hey, now we can't keep them perfectly because we in slavery. The so-called white man is gonna make sure we don't keep all of the law because he's the devil. But that's one of the reasons why you're conditioned to believe that the Old Testament is done away with, is because you don't want to keep the laws, man.
And honestly, in this captivity right now, it's hard to keep the law.
Yeah.
It's hard to keep it to the best of our ability. It's difficult.
Yeah.
But we do to the best of our ability.
That's right. Get John 5 and start at 45.
So good. Oh. St. John chapter 5 verse 45. It says, do not think that I will accuse you to the Father. There is one that accuseth you, even Moses, in whom you trust.
See that,
Yeah,
right?
yeah. That's why y'all don't want to do the law. That's why you don't like the Old Testament.
That's why you don't like the Old
Moses
Testament.
accuses you.
Yep.
You know, the Most High accused you because he wrote the law.
Yep. That's right, man.
You know? And of course you don't like to do the law. You know? Because it's not easy. It's hard.
That's right.
But you walk around and do society's laws all damn day.
Yep.
You do shit that's against the law of the Most High, naturally, to uphold the laws of this white man in this society. How ass backwards is that? You don't do the Heavenly Father's laws, but you do the white man's laws. You'll break the Most High's laws to keep the law of the so-called white man.
Hey, Jake would, they afraid to drive without all the shit that they're supposed to have to drive, so they don't get pulled over by the police. So they're afraid of the cops. So they'll follow the laws perfectly when it comes to traffic, but they're not afraid to eat pork, not knowing that the Most High can just put cancer on them immediately. You know?
They put their seatbelt on to go buy pork. You know?
So you keep, in that aspect, you keep the law, meaning you'll wear your seatbelt because you don't want a ticket, but you damn sure eat your pork, forgetting that the Lord could plague your ass with a heart disease or a certain cancer. So you have more fear of the so-called white man than the Heavenly Father. You know? That's ass backwards.
I'm going to read that again to chapter 45. It says, do not think that I will accuse you to the Father. There is one that accuseth you, even Moses, in whom ye trust. For had ye believed Moses, you would have believed me.
For if you would have believed Moses, you would have believed me. You know? Because the Lord, he spoke nothing but the law, man. He spoke what Moses wrote, man. If you reject the Old Testament, you reject the Lord. You reject the New Testament, you reject the Lord. Straight up and down. All right? So for you Israelite groups that are only Old Testament Israelites, you're going off. And for you Christians that are, you only believe in the New Testament because you believe the Old Testament is done away with, you're going off.
And that shows that you're double-minded anyway, because where's tithes at?
Right.
Where's tithing at?
That's in the law.
Of the Old Testament. That's the one law that you keep, that you so-called New Testament churches keep, is to make sure that tithing is right. Which if any man was smart enough to know something, instead of looking like, we ain't gotta worry about the Old Testament. Instead of thinking like that, think about why not. It's on the book. The book is in the book. Why not? You know? But why are we tithing and it's in the part of the book we don't read out of it? Why are we doing stuff in the end of the book? I mean, the beginning of the book that we don't even read out of it. We don't have to find us done away with it. But you're robbing God's church if you don't tithe, pay your tithes.
Basically trying to make it convenient for yourself. You know? That's another example of trying to fit the Bible to your life and trying to fit your life into the Bible. You know? They're picking and choosing what's right out of the Bible for you.
Right.
You know?
Hey, when y'all do that, man, y'all deserve death, man.
Yeah,
trying to change up. Well, I like this part. I love to love everybody side of the Bible. You know, I love the
right. God is all love.
God
that
is all
part.
love part. Love thy neighbor. That's
right. The prosperity.
I'll even take the eye for an eye part. That's cool too. But you can't just pick and choose your portion. You gotta take it all.
Yeah.
Eat this whole roll.
Eat the whole roll. You gotta accept that the Lord is not just a God of love. He's also a God of vengeance.
Yeah.
He's a God of, he gets jealous. He hates. He kills. He destroys. He's in perfect balance. You know? He believes in one nation of people being above another nation of people.
If you don't see that today, then if you're a so-called Negro, Latino, Native American, you don't know that you're on the bottom of these white people and the other nations, really. And what the hell are you looking at, man?
And that's also why they want to stay in the New Testament. Because when these so-called Christians go to the Old Testament, it reminds them of how fierce the Most High really is, man. Because when they read the prophecies, they see like, damn. It don't seem like he was all love. If he was commanding King David to go and kill a nation of people and take their women, you know.
And my dad said that. He said, oh, you read the Old Testament? It's too gruesome.
It's too gruesome.
I was like, yeah.
It's too bloody.
You're right. I like that.
We love that, man. We love reading
all these Schwarzenegger movies where they killing up everybody, that's way better.
Man. You think when you watch movies like Gladiator and Robin Hood and you know 300, you think about the Old Testament, man. You know? That's why you can't leave that out, man. That's part of our history, man. How you gonna be able to break down Revelation if you don't know the book of Daniel? Because if you don't know that, those are the same. Right, they don't mess with the book of Revelation, but they damn sure gonna have a hard time reading the book of Daniel. And you have to understand the book of Daniel to understand certain books in the book of Revelation, man. Because they both go hand in hand. They go back and forth, man. It talks about the beast in Daniel. It also talks about the beast in Revelation. You know? So you can't do away with the Old Testament.
John 5:46 now says, For had ye believed Moses, ye would have believed me, for he wrote of me.
For he wrote of the Lord Yahweh Shai, man. Moses wrote of Yahweh Shai, man. Showing you that Moses was a prophet. King David was a prophet. If you wrote about anything happening way before they came to pass, that means you prophesied about it. Making you what? A prophet. You said it before it happened. Huh?
But if ye believe not his writings, how shall ye believe my words?
Right, man. So if you don't believe in the Old Testament, how you gonna believe in what the Lord said, man? Because everything he had to say, he had to basically put it in their mind that what you read in the old scrolls was concerning me. So if those didn't exist, then how would you know about what was going to be fulfilled when I came on the scene? Right? You wouldn't be able to.
And if I may raise a question, I'm going to raise the question in people's minds. You know, basically saying, the Lord wasn't here the whole time, man. He wasn't here from Moses all the way until now. So the Bible's not just about loving Jesus, man. You know, as you say, you gotta know the whole thing.
Right.
You know, you gotta know it all. It ain't just about if you love Jesus, then God is in your life, man. You gotta understand what the Most High really wants, what he really thinking, what he asks of you. You know, especially you pastors, man, y'all the worst, man. How the hell you gonna take out the Old Testament or the New Testament, whichever you do? How are you gonna do that with good conscience, man? Shouldn't you read the whole book? And then if you did read the whole book and only teaching half anyway, man, death to you, man.
That's right.
That's different. What it say? If you take out a piece of this book,
That's Revelation.
Revelations, right?
19, no, 22. Revelation 22 and 18. 18 and 19. Yeah, that's a penalty, man.
Yeah.
You cut out a portion of the book, that's a penalty. You have a penalty to pay. According to the Lord. Go ahead.
Revelation 22 and 18 says, "For I testify unto every man that heareth the words of the prophecy of this book. If any man shall add unto these things," that's talking about you Mormons, trying to add on.
Add extra books to it. Trying to add, you know what I'm saying, whatever book. You got the lost book of Eli, the book of Enoch, you know. I went to this bookstore and they had a book called the Book of Anna. I was like, what the hell is this? Like she has some type of testament or
Yeah,
you know,
to have a testament or a testimony, you gotta have testes.
right.
You gotta have nuts.
They had right, but they flat out had a book of Anna, man. And they only spoke about Anna once, and it was only a brief, you know. Well, she was like Simeon or something, Simeon like woman, you know. You can't add no other book to this book, man. You can't try to match the Quran with this book either.
Which they do.
Which they try to, the Muslims really try to do that, man.
Try to get, especially you black Muslims. You know what I'm saying? You Nation of Islam niggas, man. How you gonna have your prophet write a book and it's not enough? You know, it is not enough. You gotta go to the main book.
Esau's fucking nuts, man. This guy's walking around with a t-shirt on, and it's fucking freezing out here. It is freezing out here, man. This guy has on a t-shirt. Showing you the soul. Hey, man, that's Edom all the way, man. They're used to it, I know.
But they was caves, man.
Yeah, they was in the caves and
They
shit.
was up on the mountain, which is cold.
They love the cold.
They didn't have clothes like that back. It says, if any man shall add unto these things, thou shalt add unto him the plagues that are written in this book.
Yeah, so you got some plays coming to your ass, man. Whoever tried to add, you know, and shit, man.
It says, and if any man shall take away from the words of this book of this prophecy, God shall take away his part out of the book of life.
That's plain, man.
And out of the holy city, and from the things which are written in this book.
Hey, so if you take away the Old Testament, you basically, your name wasn't on the list in that book, the book of life. You know? The Bible Destroyer, the Bible Destruction group, they definitely wasn't in the book of life. And there was a bunch of devils at that. It was devils that did that, so they definitely wasn't on the book of life. They even got books where it's just the New Testament, Proverbs, and Psalms. Whoever published that, their name is not written in the book of life. It's just not. You know? It's right up. Get Acts 28 chapter.
Acts 28 and 23, it says, and when they had appointed him a day, there came many to him into his lodging, and to whom he expounded and testified the kingdom of the Most High God.
This is Apostle Paul. This is when Paul was on his mission and he was out there pushing the word, man.
It says, persuading them concerning Yahushua, both out of the law of Moses and out of the prophets, from morning till evening.
So he was teaching the Old Testament to them concerning Yahushua, man. If you want to actually know more about his coming and the prophecy of him, about to be crucified and all that, you go to the Old Testament, man. And then if you want to learn about, the time when he actually came on the scene and what he did, then that's okay. You read the New Testament. You read the Gospels, man. And that were actually that were witnesses, and they were able to write it down, the events that took place because they were present. So basically the Gospels, the epistles of Paul, all that basically makes up the New Testament.
And a lot of that is talking about after. But you still, the part that you're not piecing together is Peter and Paul and all of Timothy, all of them, they still were quoting from the Old Testament.
Yep.
They continue to quote from the Old Testament.
Yep.
Because to know, and if you ain't put together, there's lessons in the New Testament, but they're according to the Old Testament laws.
Right.
The thing that they're doing it all links in because they're doing according to the law that they're understanding, the law in the Old Testament. They knew that they had to go from lands to lands to put the word out.
Hebrews 10 and 7, Psalm 40 and 7. Hebrews first, because we want to get this out of the New Testament, and then we're gonna see where he got where he got that from. 10 and 7.
Hebrews 10 and 7. It says, Hebrews 10 and 7, it says, then said I, lo, I come in the volume of a book, it is written of me.
Hey, he said he come in the whole volume of the book. The whole book. Not just part of the book, the whole book. It is written of him. Go ahead.
It says, it is written of me to do thy will, O power.
Now, who is he quoting? Let's go to the Old Testament to find that out. Because remember, in the Old Testament, the scripture said precept must be upon precept. Precept upon precept, line upon line. Line upon line, here a little and there a little. That's how you're supposed to read this book, man. You don't just say, well, the Old Testament was written of old and it pertained to the days of old, so therefore, since we're in the new days, we're going to read what's new. It's a new covenant. Right, so we're under the new covenant now, so we're going to just stick with the New Testament. Idiot, man. You're a flat out asshole.
If you want to think like that, the laws of Moses should have been gone before the prophets got to you.
Yep.
Before that.
Hey, well, Paul, because Paul's the one that written most of the New Testament. He was still in the Old Testament, teaching the Old Testament to the Jews, man, in the synagogues, man, teaching them about the Lord out of the Old Testament.
Yeah, what do you think they read during these whole ceremonies, these high holy days? When they on the Shabbat come in or the new moon, they'd all gather into the town square or whatever. you know, and read the book of the law.
That's right.
The book of the law, the Old Testament, so it will be refreshed in your mind. So, and it says right here in my sword, it says, to the chief musician, a psalm of David. Right? So this is Psalms 40, verse 7. Then said I, lo, I come in the volume of the book, it is written of me. That's a direct quote.
That's a direct quote, man. Out the Old Testament, King David. King David.
Just keep reading scripture.
This can go on all, this is, hey, man.
We can bring out scripture from the Old Testament, from the New Testament, and quote them back to the Old.
And we could quote how many times the Lord said, as it is written, as it is written, as it is written. You know? So if you want to do away with the Old Testament, go ahead and do that. But there's a penalty for that. For you New Testament loving ass Christians in the modern day Christian church, man. If I were you, I would get up out of the church, man. You should have been up out of there, man. Have you realized that your pastor is only staying in the Gospels? He don't want to leave outside of the book of Matthew, Luke, Mark, and John. He might go into Acts a few times, but he don't want to read to you Isaiah. He don't want to read to you Jeremiah. No, he don't want to read Numbers. You know, he don't want to go into the law. He don't want to read Joshua, Judges. You got it. You have to read that, man. That's mandatory, man. You better eat this whole roll, man.
Because a lot of the times, the history in those older books, like the history books, you know, that are written in the Bible, those teach you as well. You know, like just something that jumped off the top of my head was what's his name? That touched when they're bringing in the they're bringing it into the town, bro. King David was dancing, they're bringing in they had the scroll and the manna and the rod, the staff, what do you call it? But anyway, they're putting it in the town, right? And then one of them, it looked like it's about to shift, it's like the fall. Yeah, the slot, the Ark of the Covenant, slot, yeah. They're bringing in the Ark of the Covenant, and it shifted a little bit, and he put his hand on it. Now, there's not a law talking about it, but that type of instance, but really, that instance is important, because you know you know from that story, you ain't supposed to touch it. Keep your hands off of it, man. There's a certain order and way to do things. Like the breaking down the walls of Jericho. If you don't know that story, you don't know how to follow directions, man. That's teaching you how to follow directions. Like that stuff is important. All them history books, they're teaching you valuable things. The Most High put it in there for a purpose, man. If you really say you love God, you really seeking God, you gotta look into those things. And that's just reading out the book. We ain't even tell you about going as deep and going into the Greek and the Hebrew, Latin and all of that, you know, etymology. That's just reading the book. We ain't even telling you, even though we know that you're supposed to read, like the way to read the Bible is in the Old Testament. So y'all don't even know how to read the Bible. The instruction on how to read the Bible is in the Old Testament. Precept upon precept.
Usually, Christians that always say that the Old Testament is done away with, they always also the same ones that will say that the Apocrypha is not a credible book. They don't even want to believe in the Apocrypha.
Ezra and Esdras is the same person.
Ezra is the same person, man. What the fuck? And then on top of that, how the hell you gonna know about why the Israelites in the land of Jerusalem was calling the Hellenized Jews, why were they calling them Greeks?
Yeah, the Maccabees explains that.
Explains that in the Apocrypha clearly. That's how you would actually know how they became Greeks and the Gentiles, man. You gotta read the Maccabees, man, to even find that out.
And somebody that goes to one of these churches that's like that, man, if you're not asking these questions, man, what are you really doing there? Why even go? You might as well stay at home and watch Sunday football or whatever. And just to hell with it, man. Why even go to church? Why even go?
To be entertained.
Yeah, to go in there and say, you really feel good that you went in there and you did the will of God and you went in there and you rejoiced and everything for God and all that for God. Not in his name, but for God. You went in there and you gave away a little bit of money, you know, to keep it going, to keep the band playing and all of that, to keep the pastor looking nice and sharp. When he break down these lies to you, that's all he's doing. He's breaking down the word and he's lying to you because he's not giving you it all. He's keeping out the important parts when they don't teach you the whole book. You gotta see the whole book, man. Matter of fact, if you don't mind my fingers, you can grab Ecclesiastes 13. That word says, check it out.
You said,
That's not too bad.
12, yeah,
13, 12. You know the one, right? Yeah, man, like, you can't, the Bible